So the last tier, the level 100 tier, for Assassination, really the only option is Shadow Reflection. Death from Above has its uses in something like combat, but in Assassination, really Shadow Reflection is what you want to be doing. And really how that works is it just summons a shadow of yourself. It will watch what you do for 8 seconds, so every ability that you cast within 8 seconds, it watches that. And then for the following 8 seconds, it will do all those abilities. So, I'll talk about this in the kind of in the rotations area, but one's is you set yourself up for Shadow Reflection, you cast Shadow Reflection. You queue up all these abilities to maximize your damage output from your Shadow Reflection. And there's some things that are important to know, like Venomous Wounds won't proc from your Shadow, so it changes your rotation a little bit, and that's important to know because you don't want to waste abilities or cast something that isn't exactly optimal damage output. So that's it for talents. We'll look at glyphs real quick. It's nothing crazy. Again, like I said earlier, Glyph of Disappearance just reduces the cooldown on Vanish by 60 seconds. So that makes it 1 minute. So what you're going to be doing is burning your Vanish every minute, which is a DPS increase because of the tier 1 talent that we're running. So again, the more times you can Vanish, the more abilities you can cast, more damage you do. And it also drops threat. Not that that's really an issue, but it's a perk. So the other two, there's really 3 other major glyphs you can pick from, kind of depends on your playstyle. Vendetta is personally one that you need to have. So Vendetta, the Glyph of Vendetta, it reduces the damage by 5%, but it increases duration by 10 seconds, which is, it ends up ultimately being more damage. And then the other 2 that you can pick from are Glyph of Feint and Glyph of Cloak of Shadows. So Glyph of Feint will increase the duration of Feint by 2 seconds, and Glyph of Cloak of Shadows, it also reduces physical damage by 40%. So there are some fights where Glyph of Cloak of Shadows is really, really strong because you can use it defensively, preemptively cast Cloak of Shadows, take a lot less boss damage on a certain mechanic. So as you become more familiar with boss fights and you know what to expect, maybe you swap out Feint with Cloak of Shadows, depending on the fight. Okay. As far as poisons go, Deadly Poison, Crippling Poison. That's your only option. Wound Poison you could maybe use if you're doing like dailies or something like that, if you need to burst something down really quick, but if we're talking about a raid environment, you're not going to use Wound Poison. You're just going to be using Deadly Poison. Okay. So, let's get into the fun stuff. We're going to do rotation. This is where I'm going to boot up the stream here. Switch over to this screen on the stream, and we're going to go hit a combat training dummy here for a minute. Kind of go over the rotation and how this works. I'm going to talk about it, and then I'm going to show an example of kind of how you go about your rotation, what to look for, how that all works. Because this is really the important part and really what separates a decent rogue with a great rogue. And it's not that hard to be a great rogue. You just really need to understand where your damage is coming from and why it's coming from there. And then once you know that, you can kind of manipulate how it works, and you start making intelligent decisions to say, you know, this, if I cast this now, what side effects is it going to have? And then you'll kind of piece that together and be able to just be a better rogue, honestly. So for your openers, I've broken this up into 3 sections really. Opener, ongoing, and then cooldowns. And again, I know we're kind of going through this a little quickly. I'm going to be kind of giving this, it's a Google Doc. I'm going to be posting this as well. That way you can kind of go back and see, and then you'll be able to reference the stream and kind of see the rotation and how it works and how that all kind of plays together as well. So hopefully that will help. And then, you know, we'll be around to always answer questions. Everybody's pretty helpful, so that shouldn't be a problem at all. And you have Ravenholt for a reference as well. So let's go over single target openers. So before the pull, you're gonna have a DBM cast, right? DBM countdown. So before the pull, you're gonna be stealth. You're gonna cast tricks on the tank, and you're gonna pre-pot. So out of stealth, you'd think that you have these stealth abilities that you should use, right? You have your ambush or your garrote or maybe a cheap shot or something like that. Just take all those off your bar. Alright, so yeah, just take those all off your bar for PvE. You're not going to be using those. What you're going to do in PvE is, now if we go into stealth, you can see the only things I have on my bar, I do have garrote and I do have cheap shot, but those are just because they're there for PvP rather, if I'm doing dailies or whatever, get jumped, whatever the case might be, I run around flagged. So really the only thing you're ever going to open with when you're in stealth is Mutilate. So the reason behind this is because Mutilate can proc Blindside. Mutilate has extra damage from venomous wounds when you have Envenom up. So really the benefits of it are far superior than the extra damage that you're going to get from ambush. So that's really, it's a free Mutilate for the most part, right? Because you have energy reduction when in stealth from our tier 1 talent. So the opener for a rogue when in stealth is super easy. It's stealth, mutilate, vanish, mutilate, vanish, mutilate throughout the fight. That's going to be your rotation for coming out of stealth. Alright, so when we're talking about ongoing rotation, let's take a look at this. There are some rules for DPS when you're doing your ongoing rotation. You are going to want to keep Rupture up 100% of the time. You can clip it anywhere below 8 seconds. So anytime you see your Rupture go below 8 seconds, refresh it. Typically I'll do it with a 5 combo point just to kind of make me have to do it less, but if there's a dire situation where it's about to fall off, definitely make sure you get it renewed regardless of your CP. You're going to build combo points with Mutilate. Whenever Blindside triggers, which you see right there, these little flashing indicators, also your dispatch lights up, you're going to cast Dispatch. Cast Dispatch gives you 1 combo point, but it's free. You can actually, Dispatch is an ability that you will be switching out with Mutilate after 35%, but if you get a Blindside proc like that, you can do it above 35%, which you should be doing all the time. I put more kind of details in about when to use Dispatch when you Blindside procs in the documentation for this. I don't want to go too far into it. I'll show you more when I actually do a rotation. I'll kind of talk through the rotation, but we will we'll kind of go through that at that point, because there are a couple things that you should know when it comes to maximizing amount of abilities you cast during Envenom, because that's where your true DPS is going to come from. So again, since we're using Anticipation, anytime we go over 5 combo points, it gets carried over. So you can see above my name here, you can see the combo points carried over 2, and now I have 5, so I've reached the max. So if I were to cast Rupture, I have 5 combo points again. Cast it again, you see Envenom is up. So this is what we're going to be looking at pretty much the entire time. My eyes are going to be right on this energy bar, which is right below my feet. 2 most important things in the game. Alright, so when you're casting your finishers, you're always going to cast your Envenom at 5 CP, but you're going to want to pool. So pooling, this is the trick to the rogue, right? Is pooling, understanding what pooling is, and understanding why it's important. Let me show you why. I'm gonna do a rotation without pooling. Okay, I just cast it. Now I'm waiting. I got 1 mutilate off during that envenom buff. So that's the most important thing with a rogue, is the goal for an assassination rogue is to cast as many mutilates and dispatches while your envenom buff is up as possible. So let me show you the right way to do that. Okay, we've got our rupture up. We're gonna build 5 combo points. There's my 5 combo points. I have a marker here at 80%. I was able to cast 2 dispatches and 2 mutilates through that, all during the envenom buff. So that's a bunch of extra damage that you would not have gotten if you were just spamming buttons. So the goal is to get as many abilities cast during your envenom buff as possible, and you just rinse repeat that the whole fight. So when I was talking about using blindside right when it procs, you need to just be careful, because if you say you have your pooling and blindside triggers, you don't want to hit blindside at 5 CP with no envenom buff up while you're pooling. Let it pool, maybe even let it pool to like 60% rather than 80%, because you're going to get blindside, which is a much cheaper ability. So do your envenom, and then do your blindside, and then do your mutilate, and then do your mutilate. You could probably get, 2 to 4 in, depending on your procs. So that's really the trick to pulling good DPS as a rogue, is understanding how that works. Really following the cooldown, the timers. So that's why you see my timers are right in my face, because that's the most important thing. 2 things you should be watching: your timers for envenom, your combo, I guess it's 3 things technically: timers, combo points, and your feet. And you can see with the way my UI is set up, all those things are directly in the same area. I don't have to go looking for them, they're all right there, which is really important. Custom interface is a really valuable thing. I know a lot of people don't like changing their UI, but it's really important. The more your eyes wander, the less you're looking at your feet. The more apt you are to stand in bad things, like fire. So yeah, like I said it before, below 35%, you just switch mutilate with dispatch. That's pretty straightforward. Okay, so when it comes to cooldowns, we only have 2, right? You can wave bye to Shadow Blades, because that's gone. So we have 2 cooldowns. We have Shadow Reflection, and we have Vendetta. So here's the trick. Remember how I said Shadow Reflection will watch you for 8 seconds and cast everything that you cast? Well, that includes Vendetta. So what you do is you just make a macro that casts Shadow Reflection and then casts Vendetta. You can also have it cast a trinket if you have an unused trinket. So you just paired 3 mouse clicks, or 3 keybinds, into 1 macro, 1 click, which is really, really optimal, right? Because the Shadow Reflection also casts your trinket. So the cool thing with that is, the way it works is the cooldown is, okay, I hit Shadow Reflection. Now Shadow Reflection is watching what you're doing. Okay, I hit my trinket, which is on global cooldown. Okay, I hit Vendetta. And now we just did all of those things with 1 click. You can also pair this with Heroism and Potion, Agility Pot. Definitely always pair it with an Agility Pot. Heroism, again, you're going to be using this 2 times a fight for most fights. I'd say pretty much all fights this tier. 2, maybe even sometimes 3 times a fight, depending on the duration. So that's something to keep in mind, is really knowing the fight. Know how the fight is going to pan out, when the raid is going to be blowing heroism, and then timing accordingly depending on, you know, what your raid is doing. You want to get your cooldowns as many times as possible, but you also do want to pair it with a heroism, so you just kind of make the right decisions intelligently and go from there.